expect the BBC to do, given this is a sort of plucky Britain versus the Trump White House? How do you think it would go down if Friday 5 o'clock comes and the BBC say, thank you, but no thank you, no dice?
I don't think the BBC is going to do that because you've already seen two major executives actually fold and crumble under the pressure. And when you have an independent analysis and somebody's saying, hey, do not put this documentary out, you're spreading lies, and you still do the worst thing for the BBC right now, it's not even this legal case, it is discovery. And that will be shocking and damning because so many execs, mark my words, were involved in this cover-up. So I think what the BBC should do, my legal advice to them, is to crumble and figure out a settlement where they make President Trump whole. And we continue to show that media will always win through the truth. That's what we need today. That's what the president is demanding of every single news outlet. Love him or hate it, we want the truth.
For our viewers and listeners in the UK, we're a mixed audience here. Can you just run us through how that process would work in a Florida courtroom? London is a little bit trickier, and I don't think the libel bar is quite high, and it's also it also involves much smaller sums of money. But if the president was to pursue, as he is threatening, the BBC through Florida, how would it work, and what are the possible outcomes?
So I think a legal case in Florida, generally when you're talking about a public figure like President Trump or any other public figure, you have to prove actual malice, proof that the BBC knew or recklessly discarded the truth and created a false impression. So you actually have to show harm. And then it's about reputational and economic harm. Here, the fact that you had an independent analysis and a report saying this is not accurate, this will cause harm. And now the BBC has actually said, yes, we're sorry, we made a mistake. That's enough, in my opinion, to show malice. Now, what the BBC is going to argue is First Amendment. We're a news organization, and in Florida, this is one of the strongest states for the news media and First Amendment. So it may be harder to prove and for President Trump to win, but I think this win comes down to a settlement, like I said, because discovery will be damning for the BBC and accountability, which we're already getting as they are seeing executives resign, and I think there'll be many more.
$1 billion is a sixth of the turnover of the entire organisation. Obviously, he threatened CBS with a similar size bill, but they ended up settling for, I think, around $26 million. Where do you suspect this would actually end up if they do settle?
I think it'll be in the millions, but at the end of the day, if you think about the election, and if BBC had tipped the scale and many Americans didn't do their research, we'd be looking at Kamala Harris and not President Trump. So the truth matters.